Lakes are living creatures. These precious reserves of water live and die according to distinct natural cycles. Their peaceful waters seem dormant, yet they teem with mysterious life. Lakes only reveal themselves to the men and women who take time to patiently linger beside their shores. Together, we are going to discover their secrets. Surrounded by large stretches of arid land and looming mountains, the Great Salt Lake is sometimes called America's Dead Sea. Its salt content is so high, it seems unfit for life. Nevertheless, millions of birds flock along its shores to feed and mate. Though its water is saltier than the ocean, the lake is a complex ecosystem, home to amazing creatures and filled with unsuspected treasures. How can such incredibly diverse life forms have flourished in an environment as extreme as this? Located in the northern part of Utah, one of the driest states in the U.S., the Great Salt Lake covers an area of more than 4,400 square kilometers. Nearly 2 million people live in the region surrounding it. A biologist at Westminster College, Jamie Butler has devoted herself to the study and protection of the Great Salt Lake.
I grew up here in Salt Lake, and I'm an avid Great Salt Lake lover. I'm passionate about it. We were taught that Great Salt Lake isn't so great, that it smells, that it's buggy, that it's a dead lake, that nothing lives here, that there's no value in the lake at all. Great Salt Lake has a lot of different microenvironments, so even though Great Salt Lake is salty, there are lots of things that have adapted over time to live and thrive in its salty waters.
The Great Salt Lake region regularly receives heavy rains blowing in from the Pacific Ocean. How is it then that the lake's water is so salty? The reasons for this lie in the mountains surrounding it. In spring, the snow and ice that have accumulated over the winter begin to melt. An extraordinary amount of water gushes down the mountain slopes and into the rivers that feed the lake. And yet this exceptionally pure water changes long before it reaches the lake. It is a phenomenon that limnologist Wayne Wurtzbaugh, who has been studying the lake for over 30 years, is very familiar with.
One of the reasons the Great Salt Lake is salty is because these rocks behind me weather through time. These, over tens of thousands of years, break down, release calcium carbonate, magnesium carbonate, sodium chloride. These flow down into the Great Salt Lake. And if it was a normal lake with an outflow, those salts would just flow on and eventually make it to the ocean. But the Great Salt Lake is a terminal lake, which means the only way the water leaves is via evaporation up into the atmosphere. When that happens, the salts are left behind, and we wind up with a salt lake.
Since the lake is a closed-circuit system, a phenomenal quantity of mineral salts have accumulated over the centuries. 2 million more tons of salt arrive each year, to the delight of industrials who've managed to turn it into a profit. With its water much too salty for any use, this unpopular lake must have been quite a disappointment to the pioneers who settled here in 1847. Nevertheless, with advanced irrigation techniques, these persevering farmers managed to transform part of the arid terrain into fertile land and founded Salt Lake City. After their settlement came the building of the railroad and a causeway spanning the lake from east to west. This massive construction has had a considerable impact on water flow in the lake. When seen from the air, today's Great Salt Lake looks odd, as if a line had been drawn straight across, dividing it into two distinct parts of different colors. The railroad causeway has created two disconnected parts of contrasting hues.
We're standing on the shore of the north arm of the Great Salt Lake. You can see the pink water. Gonna take a sample here and measure the salinity of the water with something called a refractometer. I can look through this and see a line and tells me what the salinity is. And as expected, it's about 30% salt by weight. You can compare that with the ocean that's about close to 10 times what the ocean is.
North of the causeway, there is practically no fresh water that enters the lake. The occasional rains cannot make up for solar evaporation. Nevertheless, despite the extremely high salinity of this environment cut off from the rest of the lake, it is not completely devoid of life.
We have bacteria in here, and we have green algae, but even the green algae have red pigments that help protect from the sunlight. And so the water looks pink. And if we were to go to the other side of the causeway, just 30 meters away, it looks green. And so it's really a striking difference and a whole different community over there.
The reason the water is green south of the causeway is that its salinity is much lower than the water to the north. This is where the three major tributaries flow in: the Jordan, Weber, and Bear rivers. Here the salinity is only 15%, a tolerable level that makes it possible for life to develop. Located on one of the main migratory routes in western North America, the Great Salt Lake is a strategic stopover for millions of birds migrating north in spring. Some merely pass through, while others, such as the white-faced ibis, build their nests and raise their young in the marshes. As summer approaches, American avocets seek food in the areas exposed by the drop in water level. Survival in this shifting habitat is a constant struggle. But it is north of the causeway that we find one of the most hostile environments of the lake. On this hot July morning, a motley procession comes rolling down the causeway. Summoned by biologist John Luft, a group of 30 volunteers are about to brave the ultra-salty waters of the north part of the lake.
Take off. We want to get done before it gets too hot. Also, there's a storm supposed to come in this afternoon maybe, so if we can get off the water before the wind picks back up, then that would be great.
The group's destination? Gunnison Island, over 35 kilometers away from their launch point. John Luft is in charge of several research programs on the Great Salt Lake. Each year, he heads to Gunnison Island to carry out a delicate mission.
There is very few people that has set foot on this island.
Surrounded by the pink waters of the north part of the lake, the island is particularly inhospitable. No trees here, only rocks and salt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Looks like a lot of them moved down to the shore.
Yeah, we don't see them here, but are you ready for us to come over?
Ready pretty quick.
All right, we're on our way. Okay, go ahead.
The team have spotted the object of their mission. Thousands of young pelicans that hatched on the island a few months earlier. Each year, over 10,000 American white pelicans, close to 20% of this bird's world population, stop in this extreme habitat to breed. For these birds, Gunnison Island is a sanctuary protected from the exterior world by ultra-salty water that no predator would dare cross. The clumsy young pelicans haven't learned how to fly yet. Their parents have left them on their own to go search for food. This leaves the scientists with only a few hours to band the young birds before the adults get back.
Great Salt Lake is important for these birds as protection for nesting area, not so much as a food source. The closest food source to Gunnison Island is Bear River Bay, which is about 30 miles east of us.
Here in the bay's less salty waters, the pelicans catch fish they can then bring back to their young. Safe on their island, the young pelicans wait impatiently.
We like to track them, and the easiest way to do that is using these patagial markers because they're really visible outside the wing, and a lot of bird watchers can see them, and we don't need the bird to die to actually get a return from an observance from these birds.
These markers have already enabled scientists to solve a few mysteries. We now have a better understanding of the journeys made by the pelicans and where they go to find food.
And we have record, through the banding record, the bands that we're putting on, that show that pelicans will travel up to 300 miles round trip just to forage and bring food back to the chicks.
It isn't easy to catch the young pelicans. The volunteers need to pick up the pace since the adults are already on their way back. The scientists hope their markers will help them understand why only 25% of the young survive each year. The work is completed in the nick of time. At last, the adult pelicans can feed their famished chicks. For the moment, Gunnison Island offers pelicans the perfect refuge. But this might not always be the case. Scientists have noted that since the 1990s, the level of the lake has been diminishing regularly. Some of them fear that the trend, partially attributable to global warming, will only intensify in the future. One day, it may very well be possible for predators to reach the pelican sanctuary. To understand what the future holds, sometimes we need to look to the past. "150 kilometers west of the lake lies a vast plain of salt. It is one of the flattest zones on Earth and the ideal place for heading back in time to the origins of the Great Salt Lake.
Here we are, Genevieve.
Sunrise on Great Salt Lake. Well, it isn't really Great Salt Lake. We're at the Bonneville Salt Flat. It's the climate change of hot and dry versus wet and cool that makes this place just be a total contrast.
This place was once an immense expanse of
So we got
water.
4 maps.
Lake Bonneville,
likes this
the
map
precursor
the
of the Great Salt
So we'll
Lake.
start with this one, and then we'll see if 30,000 years ago, climate changed globally. And we went into a colder, wetter environment here in North America. It only took probably, fewer than 100 years for it to go from Salt Lake to Wendover. This is big changes. It was a large lake, about the size of Lake Superior, and that lasted for about 20,000 years.
At its highest level, Lake Bonneville covered nearly 2/3 of Utah. This gigantic reservoir contained 100 times more water than the current lake, until a cataclysm took place.
We had this failure that everybody's enamored of, I am too. It's called the Bonneville Flood. And its outpouring, this whole lake dropped 300 feet in less than a year.
The natural barrier retaining the water in the north part of the lake abruptly gave way.
Either there was an earthquake or a landslide or any number of things happened, and it failed. And once it failed, just like butter, just went right through it. It equals all of today's rivers combined, the Ganges, the Amazon, Mississippi.